From the Ticats Audio Network, this is the Ticats This Week with RJ Broadhead and Luke Tasker.
Always great to have you tuned in to Ticats This Week. I'm RJ Broadhead along with Luke Tasker, and we are getting set to call the second game of the season. That's coming up 7 o'clock on Sunday, Father's Day. A happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, including my dad, Roger, who stumbled across our Ticats This Week from last week, Luke. And he was texting me, hey, I listened. I heard you and Luke. I said, what were you listening to? He said, I don't know. I just called it up and you guys were talking. I said, okay, well, I'll let you know when we release it. So he's in his late 70s, and, you know, technology, I'm pretty proud of him for getting that far. So
good. So happy Father's Day
to
him. That's great.
Yeah. And of course, your dad, Steve, who's letting you use his office.
Yeah. Today's episode is from Steve Tasker's office, actually, for scheduling reasons, and happy Father's Day to him and all the fathers out there listening.
And you know, the three boys, they're going a million miles an hour. You got any good stories that keep you running this week?
Man, the stories are endless. Some of them aren't fit for radio, honestly. These the twins are potty trained now, so that's good. That was last year's saga, as you remember. But no, we're off and running. Everything we're busy. We'll be calling the game on Sunday for Father's Day, so we'll do our families thing another day.
All right. Well, it's the only Sunday game of the season for the Tiger Cats, so we'll enjoy that one. Again, it is a later start, 7 o'clock against Toronto. And Argos just released, they talked about it earlier, but they sent out the official release. They will unveil their 2022 Grey Cup Championship banner prior to the game. As a player, as a visiting player that has to watch that. What's that like?
Yeah, it's hard. So the most notable memory of that for me, is the 2013 Grey Cup. We had just spent a week in Sask, not just, but 6 months prior to, spent a week in Sask, which as you personally know very well, but as many Canadians will know that, a week in Saskatchewan in late November, you may as well be, at the North Pole. And so we had spent a week there, got destroyed in the 2013 Grey Cup, and then went back to spend another week in late June for the opening ceremony, or for the opening game of the season, which was their banner unveiling, and we again got killed and they dropped the banner there. So that was unfortunate. Of course, the Ticats last year went back to Winnipeg after having been beat in the Grey Cup previous year. Flip another year prior to 19-21, and it's not great. At least the Argonauts, it wasn't against the Ticats that they won this Grey Cup. Those other two examples were, but they earned it. Good for them. And there's a couple of players who are now Ticats who are going to be getting their rings and who are a part of that Grey Cup. But, for a lot of these guys, a lot of these young guys, they weren't a part of that. They weren't a part of that winning team, nor were they a part of the losses last year. And so on to the next.
Can that be used as motivation? Hey, this should be us next season, watching this banner go up at Tim Hortons Field.
Yeah. And I remember, there was a lot said about Braylon Addison having kind of seen the confetti and kind of being motivated by that into the seasons beyond, and a little bit for me. It certainly wasn't much as a player. Negative inspiration wasn't really didn't really have much of an effect for me. I was a positive inspiration guy, and but when it comes to that kind of stuff, if it works for you, great, and you should use it. And so some players, maybe they will, maybe you'll see that and have a little bit extra energy in the tank to try to be the people celebrating that a year from now.
Talk about a tough schedule for the Tiger Cats. This will be their longest road trip, and calling Toronto a road trip, but it is a visiting game. This is their longest of the season. 2 games on the road in a row. So that's some good news. The bad news, the 2 combatants in the Grey Cup, Winnipeg, Toronto, Hamilton has to play those week 1, week 2 on the road. That is about as tough as the schedule can get, don't you think?
Yeah, those two teams have won the last 3 Grey Cups, and that's not easy. But you know what? You kind of can. It seems like you can write that story a lot of different ways too, or or in a lot of different scenarios. I always felt like I traveled west to start the season. It just happened to us all the time. We would go to Sask, we would do our Edmonton, Calgary trip, or Winnipeg, and that's always just a hard way to start the season. But on the same note, at least you're staying somewhat local here, and you don't go back out again to the west. Historically, yes, Toronto's coming off of a Grey Cup championship, but the Ticats play well against Toronto, play well in Toronto very frequently, and it's a team that, it's a great battle. It's always going to be a tough one. Of course, the Argonauts get their wins, but the Ticats do have a history of beating the Argonauts and in Toronto. So I think it's a favorable condition and a great opportunity to get the season back on track.
Now, Luke, I don't want to fact check you here, but how long you been retired?
What's that? How long?
That might be in your career, the success in Toronto.
True. You're right. I mean, maybe I'm portraying my own years onto the team, because I got a few. The last 2 seasons. You go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, Tiger Cats have lost 6 of the last 7 in the regular season, 4 in a row in Toronto in the regular season. They did win the East Final in Toronto in 2021. So back to what you were saying, and I know you had a ton of success in Toronto, but lately it hasn't been great for the team.
No, you're right. And Toronto had such a up and down year last year, but they did pull out the victories against Hamilton in last year, and specifically, of course, it was the first Labor Day loss in something like 12 seasons, and that was that's something that the Ticats are going to try to correct this year. For the longest time, well before my years with the Ticats, Hamilton had not won for a while. There was Montreal. And then for even longer than that, they hadn't won in Calgary. And so my thought process over a longer historical view, Toronto's not a place where the Ticats have struggled. But you're right, in these past seasons, honestly, take 2019 out of the picture. Coach O's reign with the Ticats here, it has been a more of a challenging place. You're right.
Yeah. So I was looking at the game last week against Winnipeg, and 42-31. It was a good comeback for the Tiger Cats, at least something to build on. But I looked a little deeper into the score, and the 31 points the Tiger Cats scored, only 3 times last year had they scored at least 31 points. They won all 3 of those games. They obviously didn't win against Winnipeg, and then I thought, 42 points. When was the last time they gave up at least 42 points? Wasn't last season, wasn't 2021, wasn't 2019. It was back in the East Final in 2018 against Ottawa when the Red Blacks scored 46, I believe it was. So I think you were a part of that game. So the good news is they scored 31 points. The bad news is they gave up more than they've given up in years.
Yeah, that is, you're playing a Zach Claros offense that was not playing like a first game of the year. They were hitting on most everything that they tried. This is one of those classic, you can choose which way to look at it kind of things. So they were able to put up points. The end of that game, it was almost like, oh, wow. They put up more than 30 points. It's kind of not how it was looking at the end of the first half or even into the third quarter. But the special teams and defense really played obviously a huge role in the scores. So you can look at that in a positive way where they were really making some plays at moments, those 2 phases of the game, when the offense was really struggling to produce. Then the good thing that you can kind of point out there is that's 2 of 3 in a way. You were getting some production out of 2 of 3, and the offense, you can point to a handful of plays where it's just a point out one player's miss right there, where you've got just a poorly thrown, poorly timed interception, just one that you're probably going to say Boliev and Mitchell's probably not going to do that one, 9 times out of 10, and it was kind of fluky or a missed throw, and so that's the good way of seeing it. But I don't know, I don't think we can label the points against as an issue right now. You're playing arguably the best offense, the highest operating offense in the league, and it is early in the season. So I'll be excited to watch Mark Washington's defense this week, how they correct some of those misses.
It's interesting to talk to some of the players and coaches this past week at practice, and I think as fans, we all want to see a team go out and kind of look like Winnipeg's offense did. They were all clicking, but pretty much everybody had returned. They played together for years, whereas the Tiger Cats, new quarterback, some new receivers, new running backs, some new guys on the offensive line. A lot of gelling needed to be done, but really this group didn't play together much in the preseason, if at all. Maybe in that first game a little bit. Bo Levi Mitchell played 2 series. So as a receiver in your career, how much does a game help get that cohesiveness with everybody and a new quarterback? And is that something that shouldn't be overlooked in that loss when we just look at statistics and think, wow, maybe it should have been better? But how much should be contributed to the fact that they hadn't played together and now they have a game under their belt? So will it be better against Toronto?
Yeah. I would say the actual direct timing between wide receivers and quarterbacks, maybe it's not as big of an issue as we might tend to think. I mean, the timing of your routes isn't the thing that's lacking when you can run reps in camp as opposed to a game. I mean, that's going to be pretty close. You're running in space. You're moving behind the under coverage. Now, the reality of the rush and the quarterbacks, that's something that they have to be realistic about because they're not getting touched in camp, right? Like you can take an extra second to stand there knowing that, you want to make the play look good in camp. You want to finish the read and then let the offensive line get coached, right? So, the reality of the live rush, I think that does add a little bit of pressure to the passing game and to the timing. But that's maybe secondary to the actual receiver and quarterback timing, right? But the fact that there was near misses in the passing game, especially deep, especially in that first half, you mentioned Tim White with Bo Levi Mitchell, and in your Run It Back podcast earlier this week, Tim White's response to this same question, that miss, it just is going to be helpful to have a week of now watching that and then just seeing. I mean, these guys are career, professional athletes. All they've ever done is try to get better. So there's no room for just watching it and saying, not sure what happened. Don't worry about it. Like that's just, they have some plays out there to watch. And in your mind, after you've made that mistake or miss, or you've had the incompletions in the game, in your mind as you take the field again, it's right there. You're saying, okay, I know what I did. I know what I missed on last week, and I can do this one just a little bit differently this time.
So do you think it'll be a more together unit, a better offense from the Tiger Cats on Sunday?
Yeah, I think so. I think I could see us being impressed with Bo Levi Mitchell this week. There's a lot of moving parts. I mean, to come over to the Ticats, a short training camp that we have, first game of the season, to go back west, really, really good defense. I think that we're going to see some things look a little bit cleaner.
I think there were high expectations for the Tiger Cats, and going into Winnipeg, it doesn't get tougher than that. What is it, 2 regular season losses in their last 3 seasons? So a lot of teams are going to lose in Winnipeg. There's no doubt about that. But this is an important one against Toronto, biggest rivals. And Hamilton and Toronto play 4 times. So this could go a long way in deciding the East Division champs, don't you think?
Yeah, all of these are really, really heavily weighted games when it comes to the end there. I remember the year that you mentioned there, last time the Ticats have allowed so many points, was that 2018 Eastern Final with Ottawa. That was a year we played Ottawa 5 times, including the preseason, but we played Ottawa 5 times and we lost them all. It was just they played us really tough that year, and we had a good team, but Ottawa had the number. And those games, they count for double in your own division. So it starts now, and you get more chances. But when you get to November and nobody can remember this game, and it's just either a 1 in this column or a 1 in the other column, it still carries as much weight as that game in late October.
Last year, we talked about it so many times, not only on Ticats This Week, but on the game broadcasts and pretty much every interview or show we were on, turnovers. And they came back to haunt the Tiger Cats a little bit in game one, more so the points off turnovers. 17 points Winnipeg scored off of Hamilton turnovers. And then when you do a little math and look at the score, Hamilton lost by 11. They gave up 17 points off turnovers. Maybe it could have been a different score. How concerned are you about the turnovers? I just want to add one more thing. In practice, they were doing a lot of ball security drills, more than I remember seeing, and maybe they've done all of these before, but it really seems like the coaching staff doesn't want this to be a prolonged problem like it was last season. They want one game. We had turnovers. They had points off turnovers. Let's squash this immediately. Are you concerned with what happened in game one?
Well, yeah. I mean, you've got 6 turnovers. I think they were able to take it away 4 times. The Ticats got off to, they were miles. I was going to say miles ahead, miles behind the league in turnovers. Right? They had they had a negative turnover
52
ratio
last year. 52 turnovers and minus 22 ratio.
Yeah, I mean, really, really, it was. You can imagine, and we know because we're talking with him every week. But Coach O was so sick and tired of addressing that, of not addressing it to the media. I mean, to being asked about it, and yeah, they're not. It's not going to be acceptable, for them continuing. Meaning from a coaching staff down. A lot of the drills too. I mean, you want to establish your muscle memory. That's why you drill, physical technique. A lot of it, though, is making it very, very clear culturally in the team that a turnover is not acceptable. That when you're the guy with the ball in your hands, we've talked about it every day. You've drilled it, you've trained it. It's reinforcing that mental framework towards how costly it is to give the ball over too. And on the flip side of that, there were immediate points when they took the ball away from Winnipeg last week. It's one of those parts of football. It's blocking, tackling, and turnovers. It's like right at the absolute fundamental how to win at football is win that ratio, and they can't really operate with that thorn in their side like they did last year.
The penalties were a big story too, and Winnipeg very disciplined in game one. Hamilton had over 100 yards in penalties more than the Blue Bombers. Is this, one game we saw some uncharacteristic penalties from the Tiger Cats? Is this a teaching moment for the coaching staff?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that is another thing that's hard with coming out of the preseason, where you maybe don't have to finish a block all the way to the whistle, where in that same play live, that blocking player, an offensive lineman, finishes that block a half second longer, but in doing so has to hold, or another physical error can come of that. And then there's also the non-physical penalties, just the poor decisions, the misconduct style penalties that we saw a number of, and certainly that's going to be hammered on as well. And RJ, I think as we look through, the crazy thing about the penalties is that number is just the actual on paper penalized yardage that comes, a 5-yard penalty or 10-yard penalty.
Yes.
And you'll see in some plays, and we try to point it out in the broadcast whenever it's appropriate, there can be massive amounts of hidden yardage. It definitely happens in the return game really, really frequently, where somebody gets a 15-yard return and that 10-yard penalty gets netted from where they caught the ball. So it's a 25-yard loss, and that goes in the books as a 10-yard penalty. And it's really, really costly. It's right up there with that turnover problem. And so, yeah, coach, talk about it, all that. The players got to make their minds up to not be the one making the infraction.
A lot of talk about Toronto trying to defend their Grey Cup championship, but they're actually predicted to be very good. One question mark is, to me, is Chad Kelly, and I think for a lot of fans too, and maybe you know him better than a lot of people, so I want to get your scouting report on him. But first, I went through and just calculated He has completed 30 passes. He has one CFL start. That was in the final game of the regular season against Montreal, and really what didn't mean much. The game was meaningless. He came in and he gets applauded for what he did in the Grey Cup, and he was good. Came in the fourth quarter, went 4 for 6, had that great 20-yard run that set up the game-winning touchdown. But in his career, he's completed 30 CFL passes. Bo Levi Mitchell didn't have his best game last week, and he completed 17 passes. We all know, he's off to the Hall of Fame. So the big contrast at quarterback when you look at them statistically. But Chad Kelly, Argos believe in him, and we just haven't seen enough of him to know what he is. What do you think he is as a CFL quarterback?
Well, I find it interesting that everybody uses the descriptor with Chad Kelly of a guy who really, really loves football. And I don't have an opinion about that descriptor. I just find it interesting that that's one of the things that you hear about him a lot. Meaning, firstly, my thought is, there's a lot of guys who really love football who are playing there, and so to be described as that amongst a community of guys who are dedicating their life to it, it is interesting. And if people have come to that conclusion by their observation of him, I mean that's a pretty interesting thing. He's a kid who grew up and is a football lineage and a heritage, and is with his uncle Jim Kelly, and I like the idea of that, of a quarterback who is just, maybe before anything else, he's a football player, just loves the game. And I think that does bode well for a quarterback specifically, that he's, right down to his blood and his bones, he's a football player. And, the problem is, I don't know how to confirm and deny that, just because of how little we've seen of him play. So I'm excited to see, is that something you can really tell of the guy as he's out there on the field? But I like the idea of that he's a guy who just really loves the game. A gamer that people have described him about. And I think, from the little we've seen, that probably is true. I mean, he came in the fourth quarter of a great, as a guy who was, maybe had a little controversy in his young career, a guy who nobody really knows what to think about. He's young in the CFL and maybe a little loud. And he came in the biggest moment of the biggest game and really played very well, and was an important part of them becoming champions last year. So I think he could be exciting for the league. I think that he could. He might be a guy that Hamilton fans can love hating for a couple of years, and that kind of stuff is good for our rivalry with Toronto and for the league on wide.
And just an update, McLeod Bethel Thompson, if you're unaware, some of our listeners here to Ticats this week, he's in the USFL with New Orleans and still wants to give the NFL a shot. So he's hoping to get another NFL shot. So, of course, he was very good for the Argos last year. We'll see what Chad Kelly can do. What do you expect from the Tiger Cats on Sunday, Luke?
So to stick with the Chad Kelly theme and to talk for the Ticats defense, it's sort of a pretty common thought. A young quarterback who's maybe more prone to making a forced throw down the field or a quick, inaccurate decision to put pressure on him. I like that. Yeah, Chad Kelly's mobile, and sometimes that pressure can lead to a mobile quarterback exposing you both in the run game or getting outside the pocket and making plays downfield where the rush is less effective. And so, but I wouldn't be surprised at that if Mark Washington brings some pressure. Maybe you bring some nuanced coverages where you're really emphasizing sort of some last second changes. Show man and run zone. Show a zone and bring a zone blitz and bring pressure where it's unexpected. With offensively for the Ticats, you saw Tommy Condell and Bo Levi Mitchell trying to make a downfield play in that first half, and it continued to just be little misses here and there. I think that they'll go right back to it. I bet we see them try. Part of me says it's Bo Levi Mitchell. You don't. What are you going to not give him a chance? Like, you just go back to it and call it again, and then call it a new way, call it a different way, and let those guys try to make their plays downfield.
And uniforms on the Coach O Show with Luke Tasker. That was the fan question. That was pretty good stuff. Nice shout out you gave me, because I do keep statistical information. the white tops and black pants. We're not going to see those again, are we?
Man, it's crazy. There is the staff already knows. I know. We've brought up Drew Stroshine and he's key in making these combinations, but I think, and now correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the guy with the historical accuracy on this. We've only seen white tops and black bottoms this preseason, and then in Winnipeg.
Absolutely, right? Yes.
So
yeah, that's all they've worn.
My thought is that we'll see something different, but the other interesting part of this, RJ, is that I don't think, from Coach O's answer, I don't think that they can change them. I mean, maybe you can change in the league, but you submit this prior to the year, and then it's set. So. Interesting. Like, if a trend starts happening that you don't like, I don't know how much power you have to go back.
Yeah, exactly. It was a great question. It was good to hear Coach O's answer there. So go check out the Coach O show with Luke Tasker if you haven't heard it on the Ticats Audio Network. Luke, I can't wait for this game. Always games against the Argos. It's great to see the Ticats and Argos go head to head. It brings out the best in everybody, including us and the fans. It should be a lot of fun. And again, this is a huge win on the line. Argos' first game of the season. They'd love to get it, and Tiger Cats can't go down 0-2.
That's right. And if you go to Toronto, if you get a victory, the woes of that time in Winnipeg are so far behind you. It's just amazing how you can just flip this sort of public image of your team with one win against a rival. So really great opportunity. Excited for the game.
Well, tell the boys they got to celebrate Father's Day quite a bit tomorrow because you're busy. They can hear you on Sunday, but they probably won't see you a lot.
They'll be doing their best RJ Broadhead impersonation on Sunday evening. So,
yeah, this is true, right? For anybody who's just
they do.
in.
Touchdown, Tiger Cats! I hear it frequently. Except for they wear Josh Allen jerseys while they listen to our broadcast for some reason, as opposed to Luke Tasker jerseys, or 1-1 usually. One of the twins has Josh Allen, one has Luke Tasker.
Well, you can't blame them for being Bills fans either.
That's right.
Well, Luke, looking forward to seeing you on Sunday and huge game. So let's be ready and have some fun. Good stuff, RJ. Looking forward to it. Thanks for listening to Ticats this week. So if you want an in-depth breakdown of the depth charts, tune into the Ticats Audio Network for Ticats Game Day with Courtney Stephen and Mike Daly. They will break that down day of the game. That'll be Sunday. And, of course, the pregame show will be at 6 o'clock with Andy Fantus and Bubba O'Neill. And Luke and I will have the call at 7 o'clock on the Ticats Audio Network. It is the Argos and the Tiger Cats. Big game. First meeting between the two rivals. Hope you can tune in.
It's been another busy week for your Hamilton Tiger Cats. Luke Tasker and RJ Broadhead have covered it all, and now we would like to hear from you. Email us anytime at gameday@ticats.ca. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.